Okay. Welcome, everyone, to the meeting of the Charter Review Committee for February 20th of 2025. You please rise to do the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to go out of order on the agenda because Chief Coleman has a public hearing to go to at the DPW building for the planning board. So we're going to interview him first. Chief, would you mind coming up to the desk, please? And could you state your name and what position you hold in the town?
Sure. Chris Coleman, I'm the fire chief for North Attleboro.
Okay. And how long have you been the fire chief in the town?
Going on 6 years.
6 years. So were you here with the old form of government at all?
I was here under the old form of government as like a firefighter, lieutenant, and then a captain, but not as an administrative chief.
Okay. And you went through the whole COVID thing and that type of thing?
Correct. That was my first year in as the fire chief, so.
Okay. Could you describe some of your responsibilities as being the fire chief of the fire department, please?
Yeah, so it's the overall, operation of the fire department, from personnel management to operations to training to budget, which is, I would say, the main thing for the fire chief to manage is the budget and the finances.
Okay. I'm going to ask a few questions, if you don't mind. First question I have, does the charter clearly define your relationship to the town manager and to other town employees?
So, yeah, the charter does state that I do report directly to the town manager.
Okay. And has the charter sufficiently simplified doing the annual budget process for you?
So I would say, from what I've witnessed and dealt with over the last 6 years, yes. Seeing it from the outside when I was a private and then a captain, I think the process right now that I deal with is efficient. I think we can get a lot done within my department and quickly when we need to have items addressed.
In relationship to the CIP, okay, and have you found that with the way the CIP is put together right now compared to what it was before, has it made it a little bit easier for you to predict, or I know it's hard to predict when machinery breaks down and that type of thing, and I get that, but the whole process of the CIP, do you find it that is it easier, is it more cumbersome, or that type of thing?
So I really can't comment too much because, like I said, as being a firefighter, a private lieutenant captain, I wasn't part of the CIP process. But when I did come in as fire chief 6 years ago, I did look at the department holistically and developed a 5-year plan, which I didn't really have when I first took over as fire chief. That wasn't privy to me. So I had to develop one on the fly almost, looking at everything from apparatus to equipment to building maintenance. I will tell you one big thing that helped me out is the fire station feasibility study, which we recently just finished. That gave me a good look at all the 3 fire stations, incorporating the one from 2008 and 2014 and forecasting out. So I've got a pretty robust 5-year plan. It does change throughout time. Like we're seeing some roof leaks in some certain spots right now we didn't have until the last storm. So some of that stuff will get added in and moved around on the CIP as we move forward.
Now, you're also involved in emergency preparedness for the town. Have you found, how is that challenge for you in that?
So I will tell you, since me becoming fire chief and Mr. Borg becoming the town manager, up until Mr. Borg being here, we never had a budget for emergency management. Now we have a budget. It fluctuates from year to year based on needs. For example, we were able to get a software system up and running right now from our budget for tracking damage assessment within town. So that's a positive. We got emergency management equipment. We've new light towers, generators, signboards that we can use for emergency management. So up until I became chief, we didn't have much emergency management. Going for the EMAP accreditation, a lot of work, a lot of developing policy procedures, which were not in place prior to me becoming fire chief. So we're continuing to work on that with Mr. Borg's assistance with that.
Okay. Has the charter improved the experience of dealing with the municipal government?
So I would say yes. So obviously, 28 years in the fire service. My father was the fire chief here in North Attleboro, so I got to kind of see what he went through as fire chief. I would say the form of government under charter has changed, and I think we are much more efficient than we were when I was a private and a young officer. I think the town meeting had its place at that point in time, but I think now in 2025, we have a lot of items that have to get done on a day-to-day basis, and that charter allows us to accomplish that through the town council format and the town manager format.
I see that you have a pretty good social media presence, and which I'm glad to see, that reaching out to the community and letting them know certain aspects of with the fire department, what's coming up, and if there's anything that they need to know, especially with weather and that type of thing. But I like to see the stories about what the firefighters are learning, in the different classes that you have to go to. So it kind of gives perspective to the residents that what the firefighters actually, the training that they have to go through to do their job. Do you receive any feedback from town residents at all, or individuals, from the town? Do you get any feedback from residents at all?
On the social media sites or in general?
Just in general. It can be both, okay?
Yeah, quite a bit, actually. I do get several messages on the social media sites, thanking our firefighter, thank paramedic and EMTs for a job well done. Phone calls, emails, we do get quite a bit, and we do make sure that all the firefighters get that information. We are cautious about, commenting on the social media sites. We gotta do work with Taylor on that to make sure that everything is being put out in a correct fashion. But yes, we do get quite a bit of thank yous into the office.
Yeah, I'm just curious from my standpoint, in the sense, I remember being on part of RTM years ago, and, we only had one ambulance, and it took like an act of God to get a second ambulance put on the thing. How many ambulances do you have now in the town that...
We're running 2 full-time ambulances right now.
2 full-time ambulances,
Yep.
Okay, all the time, 24 hours?
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They both run out of the downtown station, and they go 1 for 1. That way, the call volume, we're not, having one truck getting too many miles, and the other truck not getting any miles. That's what was going on earlier. We had the trucks split in the town because the call volume is kind of unpredictable. A lot of it is in the downtown area, but, just before I got here, both our ambulances were doing calls on the opposite sides of town, so, but 2 full-time ambulances.
Do you feel as if the calls have increased dramatically in the last couple of years?
Yeah, so since 2017, we have seen a 37% increase in call volume.
Wow, that's pretty hefty. Specific to your role, is there anything you wish the charter did differently?
So To my role, I don't believe so. Obviously, we had the fire commissioners many years ago, and then that was done away with when I was a young firefighter at the time. But for the charter, I think specifically, no. I think we, from the budget standpoint, I work very well with Mr. Borg, and we look at the budget every time, and I think we can get a lot accomplished going through town council in his office.
Does anyone else on the committee wish to ask any questions of the fire chief, please?
I have one.
Go ahead.
Do you have one? Hi.
Hi.
So one of the questions that I have, when we worked on this last time, we talked about the strong chief statute. We talked about it in the context with Chief Riley at that point. But you have a statute as well as a fire chief. So I'm just wondering what you think of whether you feel you need a strong chief statute enacted here or adopted here, or if you feel like things are fine as they're set up.
So I'm only used to this format, right? There aren't many strong fire chiefs, and the only strong fire chiefs that I know of are under the civil service system, which we are not part of the civil service system anymore, which we did come out through town council, which was a very good positive for the department, just due to the multiple steps to get anything done, to hire, to promote. One prime example was off the civil service list, we would get one person. We just put out an application process. For one position, we get 25 applicants outside of civil service. So right now, I mean, I have a very good relationship with the town manager. I have the contract in place, and the strong chief, there aren't many that I am aware of in the area, and I'm not used to any of that aspect of things.
Okay, great.
Okay. Wanda?
I just have a clarifying question. You had mentioned a certain type of accreditation that you were going for, and it was an acronym, and I just want to make sure I know what that is.
Yeah, EMAP, Emergency Management Preparation. Accreditation, sorry, yeah, thank you. It's a federal accreditation that there is basically no, as the city of Providence and the city of Boston are the only two that have the accreditation. So if we get it, we'd be one of the only communities that have it.
Great, thank you.
Do you have any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, just one. It's been, from what I understand, that many fire departments have really shifted towards emergency like a smaller percentage of fire calls versus medical-related calls, emergency calls. And I'm curious what that ratio is for our system, and do you feel has that increased through the years, and do you have the equipment and training and everything at your disposal that you need in order to meet those demands?
Yeah, so 70% of what we do is emergency medical services related. When we have our ambulances out of town, we have two fire engines, a ladder truck, and a shift commander left to combat any kind of fire alarms, structural fires, other medical emergencies. We have to be prepared for an all hazards emergency, even though that the majority is EMS. But we've got a very diverse downtown where we got houses that are 2 feet apart in some areas, 3.5 story wood frame homes that if they catch fire could easily spread. So we have to be prepared for that. And having the apparatus we have right now and the makeup of the apparatus, the 3 fire stations that are fully staffed and opened, we are able to handle multiple calls at the same time under the current concept.
Thank you.
Okay. I have one last question, Chief. Is there anything else, if you had a genie in front of you and he could grant you your wish, okay, what would be the wish for the fire department?
The wish, Mr. Borg and I have talked about this in the past. Obviously, budget is very dependent, but I would love to see this town, this department to get some increased staffing and get at least 15 to a group that will give us the opportunity to capture more calls. But obviously, budget is very important. The money coming in and the money that are going out have to all equal. But that would be my wish: is at some point we can get increased staffing into our fire department to increase our capabilities.
Does anyone else have any questions for the chief?
I just have a follow-up to that. So you said get 15 to a group. How many do you currently have in a group?
Right now we have 14 to a group, and our minimum is 13.
How many groups do you have?
4.
And do you feel like 2 ambulances is enough, or?
So at one point, many years ago, we did try and do a 30 ambulance on an impact shift. And believe it or not, it really wasn't catching that many calls. We do get mutual aid in quite a bit. Last year, I think we took in mutual aid 240 times in that year. But the ambulances, they do have a quick turnaround time at the hospital. So every time that the trucks were back in town, those 2 ambulances were doing the calls. Again, that 30 ambulance really wasn't doing much. But obviously, a 30 ambulance would capture those 240 calls we used mutual aid for last year. That would definitely bring some additional revenue in. But in order to do that, you have to increase the staffing to accommodate that.
Just a kind of follow-up question to that. When it comes to asking for assistance from surrounding towns, has that kind of gone down quite a bit, or is it about status quo, or?
It remains status quo, I would say, throughout the years. Like I said, last year it was about 240 times, and we went out about 240 times, so it's kind of equal. Attleboro and Plainville are our 2 primary towns that we go to. Although Cumberland, we've been going there actually quite a bit lately, as they've been having their increased call volume. But yeah, we do have an equal mutual aid coming back and forth, and that's both for fire and ambulance. So if we have a fire in town, we're getting mutual aid in from our surrounding communities, and vice versa. If Plainville's got a house fire, we're going mutual aid right away. The same thing with Attleboro, Cumberland, Mansfield. We all help each other out.
And another question towards that, the working relationships you have with the surrounding towns, is it a very positive relationship?
Yeah, I would say it's exceptional. All the area fire chiefs were kind of all promoted at the same time. We're all friends. We all talk. We all communicate every day. And whenever somebody has a building fire, we're going with them and we're helping them.
Okay. All right. Does anyone else have any other questions for the chief? Okay. I want to thank you for coming here tonight. I think you do a fantastic job. And I feel as if we're very fortunate to have you as the fire chief for the town of North Attleboro.
I appreciate it.
So you're all set.
Thank you.
So now from one meeting
Up to the next
to
meeting.
another.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay. Let's go back to the agenda. Let's do the approval of the minutes of January 23rd of 2025. Has everyone had a chance to look at the meeting minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Could someone make a motion, please?
I will. I move to accept the meeting minutes of January 23rd.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm abstaining.
Okay, so it's 401. Okay. We really don't have any committee announcements. Does anyone in the audience wish to address the committee? Please raise your hand. Okay. So now let's go into old business, okay? So one of the things that, we had a couple of things, a few things that have been, hanging out there. And I know Melinda's done a lot of work on the flow chart. We received a response from Lauren Goldberg, and she was pretty extensive in her response, and she, copious notes, and Melinda was able to put together make some changes to the flow chart. Melinda, I'm going to kind of put you on the hot spot and talk a little bit about the work that you've been doing since you got the information from Lauren.
So I guess just briefly, the purpose of this document is for members of the Charter Review Committee to understand what is involved in amending the charter this is meant to be a reference document, so what's here lays out so if you look at the top green pill there, so required review begins, so that's where we are now, and then you can walk through all of the different pieces of what would be required for a particular type of review, which is outside of the purview of us, but could be a reference for someone else if, for example, town council was interested in seeing this. I
Right.
think that's, they would be more than welcome to see this. So that's what I did. It's also a working document. This shouldn't be viewed as the authoritative source of how charter review works. So that's listed at the top here. Ideally, we can put this in the record somehow so we can maintain it as a resource and a future charter review committee would have it to work from. So that's my goal, that's what's here, and I think the next step would be to decide how to get that
So the town
into the record.
council can use this as a reference then?
I think that would depend on kind of how we incorporated it. Like if we decided, for example, to include this as a reference with the report that's written, I think that's one way that we could pass that on to them if they wanted to refer to it. It would be part of that report. If there are other possibilities for how we want to do that, I think we should discuss those.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions about the flow chart at all? Okay. Now, when you were deciphering, because Lauren can be very wordy, being a lawyer and that type of thing, did you find that some of her suggestions were a bit, I don't want to say, did it make it hard to decipher, I guess would be the word?
No, I don't think so. I think she's coming at it as an attorney and I'm coming at it as a service designer. So I think we can just boil things down to see how they function. And whatever information the attorney who is the expert on the process offers to us, I think it's important that we understand and consider that as part of, what needs to be represented in a diagram.
So with this document, it's not the be-all, end-all to it's just
Certainly
it's
not.
like a guide.
This is a reference.
Yeah, it's
like,
a reference
what
and the
happens
guidepost type of thing.
Yes.
So a lot of times, if the council decides to make charter changes, okay, and it basically give a little bit of a roadmap, but once it gets into the lawyer's hands, then it, becomes a little bit more sophisticated because this is kind of like a two-dimensional thing and that type of thing. And when you're dealing with the lawyers, it's like three-dimensional, okay? Because, it can go in different directions and that type of thing. One of the misconceptions that especially when we had Lauren come before us, was we only thought there was one way to do a charter change, and we thought the only way to do it was to have it a charter commission to make a change. Well, we found out that that's not quite true, and so that there is another way to do it and that type of thing. So it kind of opened our eyes a little bit because it's a very sophisticated playbook, okay, and that type of thing. So, when you get a chance to look at it and that type of thing, I think that you'll find that it's a very well thought out document, and I welcome any feedback, from anyone who looks at it and that type of thing. And just give us your opinion of the flow chart, and it's something that I feel that Melinda has done a really outstanding job putting it together. And so, does anyone have any questions on it?
We can make this part of the minutes so people can view it, or is that?
Well, it is part of the minutes.
Viewable document, I mean.
As a viewable document. What we'll do is, when Lauren submits her minutes to the town clerk, this document will be part of the minutes. Okay? Any document that someone comes in here that does a PowerPoint presentation on suggestions for change and that type of thing, that also becomes part of the meeting minutes, okay, and is submitted to the town clerk. So one of the things that we take a lot of pride in on the Charter Review Committee is that if anyone goes to the town clerk to look at meeting minutes, that, it's, they're going to get, some really good solid meeting minutes that are 3 or 4 pages long with documents that will back up what was written in the meeting minutes. So, and Melinda, of course, she does a fantastic job with the meeting minutes. Okay?
I appreciate this, with the work that went into this, and it's very clear, and would also support including it in addition to it would be in the minutes, but we should include it with our final report. I think it'd be helpful for the council.
Okay. Next on the agenda is a discussion of the school invoicing PDF. And before we get into that, I have something to say, being the chairperson and that type of thing. One of the reasons why I allowed this on the agenda is because we have a member of our group, David here, who works for the town of Hingham. And what is your title, David?
I'm the procurement and contracts manager for the town of
Okay,
Hingham.
for the town of Hingham, right?
Yes.
So I thought it would be given opportunity to, if you had any questions, and he could talk a little bit about what his job is and that type of thing. I want to make sure that everyone understands that we've had discussions about the chief procurement officer and that type of thing. All right, and the charter is quite clear about the chief procurement officer, okay? And in going asking questions from different department heads and that type of thing, and we've asked them how they've handled, the process and that type of thing. Most of them have had a positive response with it and that type of thing. So I'm going to hand it over to Tasha, okay? And, you can talk about the reason for the school invoicing thing. Okay.
So Melinda had asked me, we followed up on the Steve Carvalho, and he had some concerns as well about the processing and the speed by which invoices were paid or contracts were approved. So in the context of that, I provided this to Melinda to give her context from the school department side as well, since what we're looking for is themes and consistencies between the testimony that we're receiving. So I had forwarded this to Melinda, and she asked if we could put it on for today. So this came from the superintendent on February 3rd. 2025 to the school committee and goes through some various invoices that were still open.
Okay. One of the things that, with the charter, okay, and I've said this before, when it comes to this thing, it is quite clear on who is the chief procurement officer. In doing investigating work in the last few months and talking to department heads and that type of thing, okay, there has been some issues raised about the process, okay? And here's the thing. As a Charter Review Commission, I really think that this is out of our wheelhouse, okay? It's not something that the Charter Review Committee has any authority on this whatsoever. So my feeling, and I'm going to make it known, okay, is that if there is an issue, a department has an issue with the process of how it's being disseminated, then I think that department needs to arrange a meeting with Mike Borg and sit down with them and put the cards on the table and iron out the differences. I don't think it's our job as the Charter Review Committee to get involved in interdepartment concerns, okay? Because we cannot make recommendations about the process. In fact, the town council can't even make recommendations about the process. So unless you want to talk further about this, then I'm going to give an opportunity to Mr. Borg to reply.
So, John, respectfully, the last report that we wrote, which you were a part of, page 14, specifically references school department budgets and procurement and flagged it as an issue that was ripe for monitoring, which is why this has been raised. There are additional portions of the prior report that also address communication between departments and whether that the charter review has improved that communication and facilitated that communication. So I don't see this as an issue of overstepping. I think this is something that, well, it is something that each department has come before us and addressed specifically. It's one of the questions that you talk about as well, whether there's been an improvement in communication. So I'm not really sure what the objection is. This is one of the available.
I'm just stating my opinion.
I understand.
Okay.
But this is one of the available data points that we have, just like we looked at Steve Carvalho's information. We discussed with him what he looks at in, what was it called, Teams, and that's in the meeting notes as well. So it's one of the available data points. I'm a little hesitant to suggest that we should be discounting any information at this point and creating a funnel system where we're only taking in some information. My understanding of our role is that we take any information that's available to us and put it in the pot and look for themes.
Mr. Borg, would you like to address?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to go through the spreadsheet that was provided and provide the other half of the story. I think you only have part of the information. So we could go item by item and provide you information specifically on each one of the items that are there and have a discussion about what action was taken and where that currently stands today, if that would be a benefit to the board, if that adds the data point and enhances communications.
So what I think would be helpful to improve communications is consistency between departments. One of the things that Steve Carvalho had talked about was that he frequently goes into Teams to see where his contracts are in terms of whether they've been approved or not approved, and it doesn't seem to be consistent for him. So he's had to escalate things to your office. We also had discussions about how that interfaces with, I basically just asked him, has that changed over time? One of the suggestions that Melinda had in conversation with her was that some of this may be a change in system and a change in process. Steve was saying, for example, he used to just walk over to whoever I think it was Bob Bliss, he was talking about, he'd walk across the street and have a conversation with him and things would be ironed out quickly. Currently, it seems like there's a lot of different cooks in the kitchen who are handling the contracting, so depending on whose desk it lands on, it can either delay or expedite. So again, this is part of why I'm suggesting this isn't a one-time issue. This is part of the...
Well, I would think you're generalizing contract communications with communications in general. And I would disagree with it.
All I'm doing is summarizing what Steve said, so...
And I would disagree with your characterization of how that is processed within Teams and used today. More than welcome to walk anybody through how we use Teams and how contracts are monitored. And with the next procurement system that we're getting ready to implement through OpenGov as well. as we are constantly looking for areas of improvement, ways to speed up things. We actually just had a conversation with, where we looked at the linear timeline of our contracting process and where it happens and where there are delays. We saw that KP Law was probably average 2 to 3 weeks on a contract with our particularly assigned attorney, and we asked them to change that, and now we're flipping contracts in a matter of 2 to 3 days, and so those are all being uploaded into Teams. And this is, you can check Teams and check the status, and if there's anything that's particular, so you can always give me a call as well, and if we can add emphasis onto it or move it in priority, we certainly do that.
Can you talk a little bit about the new system that you're investigating?
Not me. I'll let Mr. Sakara talk about it, because it's the
Okay.
same system the town of Hingham is using, so.
Yeah. David, could you talk a little bit about it?
Sure, yeah, I mean, so prior to my arrival in Hingham, we were doing it the very old school way, you know, the delivering packets and envelopes and everything on the last hour of bid, and it was just a lot of paperwork and things of that nature. And when I arrived to Hingham, they had that system, OpenGov, for about 4 years, and I immediately used it within a week or two. I fell in love with it. It's a great system. It's extremely user-friendly. The back end of it for anyone using it is very user-friendly. There's a lot of positive feedback with vendors, with contractors that are uploading it, especially ones that are key players all the time, whether it's water, sewer, you know, police, fire, vehicles, whatever it may be. And you can upload contracts or, you know, DCAM certificates or whatever it may be, and it goes from bids to proposals to requests for quotes. And so Mr. Borg and myself had a conversation prior to being appointed to this committee, and I highly recommended it in his office, and I think that the town of North Attleboro would benefit greatly when it comes to streamlining a process and kind of making things seamless as far as contracts and procurement goes. And I'm sure once they're on board, OpenGov is very good with their reps on how to get other department heads and how to create intakes in the system. But I'm glad to hear that the town's going with OpenGov.
Is it just something for the state of Massachusetts, or is this a national thing?
It's national.
National.
Yeah, they're everywhere right now.
Well, the system is designed to create an online portal where documents can be, that reside. We mimic that in a loose fashion with Teams, right? Teams wasn't particularly, the town didn't, before my arrival, didn't have a system. It was very much like Mr. Sakara had described, you know, large envelopes stuffed over with, you know, everything from contracts, W-9s, certain issues, all packaged together, and it was handled manually. We migrated to Teams to scan that and put it up and give real-time visibility on that. This takes it to the next level because it now communicates with the vendors, lets the vendors communicate with it. We actually use this for Viewpoint, our permitting software, so it's the same company that we use for that, and that's been a tremendous success. So that allows you to do certain things like get your dog license on line or submit a permit or a request, and we're trying to roll it out to as many departments as we can. Just a shout out to Amy in our IT department. She's the one heading that up and been rolling from department to see what we can do. We're trying to get to planning board next so we can get, or in the planning department, so all their permits can be uploaded. That's a large Herculean task because they've got a lot of stuff to do it, but we see this as an improvement. We're finalizing the contract now. We're going to roll this out at the April procurement conference that we hold in the spring, and then hopefully that'll be enough time to transition by 1 July to a new system under OpenGov.
Okay. Do you wish to add anything else, David, at all about? Does anyone have any questions for David? Because this is a golden opportunity. If you have questions, he's worked not only in the town of Hingham, but several other towns.
Well, and before his comment starts, I would just add that this also highlights our continual observation, tracking, and looking for ways to improve the process, our process improvement for procurement. So it's something that we've been engaged with. We have a number of discussions. How do we do this? How do we fix this? Matter of fact, the spreadsheet that you got came from a meeting between the school and my department, because that's how we communicated back and forth on if there was an issue, and that's where it was generated from.
Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
I don't know who this should be addressed to, but in terms of OpenGov versus old school system versus Teams, I think what I'm hearing is there's the old way of doing it, and then there's some kind of platform that gives you observability, and like a bunch of people can collaborate within the platform. So I'm wondering, is there a plan for kind of determining some type of metrics for here's how things are going currently with Teams, the amount of time, who's involved, and evaluating the current system against what might, you might see improvements in OpenGov, and how might you talk about those improvements?
No, that's a fair question. I don't have that today, but we could absolutely take, because I can't compare it, I can only compare it to what we've been doing since I've been here, much like Chief Coleman's answer, he could tell you what it was with the firefighter, and then when he became chief, right? But we could certainly take a snapshot and look at some metrics of where Teams is and where we see, areas, because that's actually what has driven us to say, hey, why is it taking so long at KP Law? Or why is this department sitting on this? Or what do we need, X, Y, Z? But we can absolutely take snapshots today and then compare it to OpenGov and see if there's a way to measure if there's an improvement or not.
Thanks.
You bet.
Does anyone else have any questions on this?
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. For Mr. Borg.
Yeah.
First, my recollection of that conversation with Steve Carvalho was that the only lag time was with KP Law. So I'm very encouraged to hear, that was his only criticism. I'm very encouraged to hear that you're taking that from 2 to 3 weeks to 2 or 3 days. So that's significant. And with that, how often is it clear? I mean, Mr. Sweet made a good observation once that it's not just bureaucracy. We have transparency matters. So when it comes to spending tax dollars, people have the right to know,
Yes.
What did we spend it on, not just bottom line, this thing costs X dollars, don't ask questions. So that breakdown is really important. Are some of the, if there is conflict on paying an invoice, is some of it a difference of opinion about what needs to be, like you're asking for, I need to have A, B, C, D, and somebody else is saying just B is fine? Is it a conflict in what's reported?
No, it's a very good question, but I'm going to give you the it depends answer, right? I think it depends on what the contract is, what the situation is, how it's being handled. Is it an issue with documents? Is it an issue with invoicing, right? Is it something that's, because I think what you have on the spreadsheet is not purely contractual, right? There's some payroll stuff on there. That's a different issue, right? That's not procurement. So it depends. What we would like and we think would work best is, a system where if there's an issue or a concern, it can be raised, right? And there can be a response so we can get it. Or if on either side, where either if you're in a department that has a problem or an issue, you can come back and say, hey, this is what we need, or can you expedite this? Sir, absolutely. We'll figure out what we can do. I strongly believe this is a yes community, right? We strive to get to yes. We don't want to say no. Sometimes no is an answer, but we also work hard to get to yes for everything. It might be, yes, I can do it, but I might not be able to do it in this certain way, or here's why I need the response to that question. If there's one on that sheet you want to take a look at, we'd be happy to, we could use that one to walk through and use that as an example and maybe talk through what the issues or potential where the questions are. I mean, transparency is something we want to make sure, that give every resident good confidence in how we're doing business and how the money's being spent. So if there's one on there you want to talk about, we're happy to do it.
Is there one that you want to talk about?
No, not without the schools being here to be able to discuss their side as well. As I said, I was simply providing this for more of a data point. I didn't know anyone was coming. And I would have appreciated that heads up.
well.
I do have a question.
Sure.
It's on the spreadsheet, but I don't have any knowledge of
Okay.
what's on the spreadsheet. So I'm wondering, we're talking about OpenGov, which is
Yep.
really what I'm interested in. So might something like OpenGov help with some of the notes we see on here? So, the town wanted specific dates of service, not a range and description of boilers, right? So do you know if there's any way to kind of standardize what a vendor might be asked for such that it might kind
So
of
I'm going to
smooth
ask
the hurdle?
Mr. Sequeira's help with that, but I'm going to give you a perspective of because I don't think that's really I think it's a partial contracting question because it's more of an invoicing question, right? Because if there was if we have a contract in place that says vendor and the town, right, through whatever department this came through, have an agreement to perform services, right, provide goods, whatever that is. Within the four corners of the document is a requirements that we all agreed to. Some of them may include price lists, right? They could even say, see attached catalog, right? And you get a 10% volume discount off of that catalog. It could be, we will provide, and depending on the type of contract, if it's a construction contract, you have different things like prevailing wage and pay sheets, that you have to provide. You have to include that with the invoice. If there was a certain time period of services that were to be provided within the four corners of the document that was agreed to, they would have to do it. So if there's an invoice or billing item that was potentially missing an item, it might have to go back to that department and say, hey, we need X, can you provide this? Or what was X, Y, or Z? For clarification, so we can understand that, or at least from the accountant's office, right? And I won't speak for the accountant, but that's how that question might happen and what we're looking for to potentially resolve it.
So if I'm understanding what you're saying, the OpenGov piece is specific to contracts, procurement, would not touch invoicing payments necessarily?
I have to rely on your experience. I don't know how.
Well, I mean, at this time, it doesn't, but I know OpenGov is starting to roll out with, for example, the town of Hingham uses Munis on the back end. If we gave OpenGov, if we requested to Munis that they would give OpenGov essentially the town of Hingham's finances, it would basically kind of talk to each other.
To create a handshake between the two systems to allow.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Here's an invoice.
Yeah.
It goes against this particular contract, right? And if you have Munis in place and it can do the handshake, then once it gets approved, it from the department sends to the town accountant, right? Because everybody has to send everything through the town accountant. Town accountant looks at it and says, yep, you have funding in the account.
It appropriates the.
Then it appropriates, and then it does the handshake to Munis to then go to potentially to accounts payable to move
So
forward. to be paid.
OpenGov allows an integration with Munis, and then whatever Munis has, they can work that out.
It can.
Yeah.
It is possible.
It is possible.
Yes, and we are actively looking at Munis, right? We have Munis on the accounting side, so at our level, so that's already in place. But we're looking at Munis to expand it to HR, payroll. And I know Mr. Sweet had looked at what they do from the payroll perspective that we might potentially use. So we're looking at wrapping in really what I call a common operating system, right? That we have a single system that everybody uses to kind of streamline transactions internally. It gives it the accountability and the transparency that we would be satisfied with, and then hopefully reduce errors and improve time of transaction and processing.
Does the schools use Munis at all, Tasha?
No, Mr. Borg and I have had conversations about that. We need a full-time person for about a year to be able to transition over properly, and we haven't been allocated funding to do that, so we still have two separate systems.
Yeah, and this is a conversation that the chair and I have had on Munis. And what we've agreed to from the town side is we will pay for the conversion, right? And it does come with a 1-year side-by-side, walkthrough, because we're going to have to maintain our two systems, we think, for a period of anywhere from 12 to 18 months, side by side. So you'll bring the one system up online that you're currently operating, you'll bring Munis up beside it, you'll have to do probably double transactions for a little while to make sure it all works, and then you'll slowly off-ramp the older system and then ride strictly on one. So if you've been through this before, this is what it, but yeah, the town looks to, because I think it's beneficial to the town that we'd be all on the same common operating system. And that's why the town's come and said, hey, we would pay for this, we would sign it, we would make it a capital project. Matter of fact, Mr. Morabito and I have been discussing prioritizing this, and we'd like to do it in this next year in FY26.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions or concerns or anything they want to bring up?
I mean, I don't have any, questions, but just as a follow-up, I mean, clearly you can hear how many moving parts it is to this massive, operation every day of a town. And I think that this is a first step with OpenGov is to, kind of simplify, and kind of, streamline the procurement side and with the contract side and all that. So I think that this is a very good first step for the town to address any kind of issues. There will obviously be some growing pains, but not many, really. I think once the kind of up and running, I think that the town's going to definitely see benefits as far as this side of it. And I believe that the department heads will like using it as well, so.
Okay. Anyone else want to bring anything to discussion on this? Okay. Thank you, David, for your feedback on OpenGov.
Of course.
Okay, it's very enlightening. I think that sometimes, being involved in town government for as long as I have, and I used to be a school food service director at one point for the town of North Attleboro. It can be, the systems that were in place were very, and this is going back, over 20 years, it was, cumbersome back then and that type of thing. I have a question, and it's just for my own edification about state bids, okay? We talk about if something is on the state bid. And does that, the state vets those contracts, correct?
No.
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 State bid list is it's a tool that allows you to rapidly procure something, but you still have a requirement to generate your own contract.
Okay.
Now, the state may have a contract with a vendor that provides a service that you may want.
Okay.
And they have their contract. But you still, and under Chapter 30B, right, and according to the state procurement, you still are required to generate your own contract because you may slightly change those deals. You may not have the same requirements and obligations and agreements, like, for instance, insurance level requirements, right, for workers' comp, or having an umbrella policy to cover drivers, or whatever it is. So the state specifically says, you use this to avoid the bidding process because we've done that for you. So, but then you still take it and you enter negotiations with the folks on it, and you are allowed to negotiate the price. You can say, hey, you did this, but we need more quantity, less quantity, more or less, so we want to pay this. You're allowed to now then have that negotiation and then come to an agreement. What the state bid list does is affords you the opportunity to not conduct an IFB or an RFP. So you skip that part of the process and you go right to it and say, you're authorized, I'd like to do business with you, let's come to terms, I'll have a contract, we'll agree, because the state's not going to indemnify you. The state might have something in their contract that you might not be indemnified that you're looking for in this. So it drives you to create your own contract
Okay.
with the vendor.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I wasn't quite sure how the state bid process worked. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions or concerns? Now's the time to bring it up. Got enough brain power in this room, okay. You know, not too often where we get all these great minds in this room and that type of thing. Okay. Okay. Guess no one else has any other questions or concern. Do you have anything else, Mr. Board?
I think I'm going to sit here for the next one, too,
Okay.
just in case.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. All right. The next one on the agenda is the update on Big Red 311 data progress. I'm going to hand it over to Melinda, because she's the one that's been working with Taylor and with Chanel. Unfortunately, they could not be here tonight and that type of thing. So take it away.
Sure. So the idea with looking at Big Red 311 data was to understand if there was anything in these data that might help us understand what we were meant to be looking at from the last charter report. So one of the things was communication between departments. Might we see anything related to that there? So I was able to speak with Taylor and Chanel, and they showed me Big Red 311, formerly SeeClickFix, and what their interface looked like, what was there. And we talked about whether or not it was possible to pull some data out for the purposes of analysis, what themes might be there, if any. The snag that we ran into is that in the current sort of iteration of what the town has, there are canned reports. I know full well there is a database that lives somewhere that has all of the information that should be accessible via an API or some other format, but it doesn't look like we can get those. So what I have now is just what they could give me, and I was planning to just review that for any type of themes. And then if there looked like there was anything that might be worth going into the notes section of Big Red 311, then I would follow up with Chanel and see if that was something we'd be able to do.
Now, when you went through it with the 311, what did you notice were most of the calls about?
I have not looked at, I haven't looked at it yet.
I can tell you. Potholes.
Puddles, you know,
Potholes.
rats, and that type of thing.
A lot of the, yeah, okay, look, if I may.
Certainly.
I think we started this and we rebranded SeeClickFix about 2 years ago. Full up as a 311 system and giving an opportunity for the public to communicate. And the SeeClickFix, as it was prior to 2 years ago, was really DPW. It was focused on them. But I saw a tool where we could take information from the public and using their site, their cameras, what they see in their front yard, on the street, wherever they're at, as a way to give back to us and say, hey, there's a problem here, or there's an issue, or I have a question. And turn that around and rapidly respond to the resident through this platform and be able to address their concern or issue. Primarily, it was potholes. I mean, it was a lot of, there's a pothole at this location. And if you, with the SeeClickFix app, you can download it, put it on your phone. It will geotag your images with a location. So if you get a picture of a pothole, we'll know where it is, right? And then DPW it goes right to DPW. We didn't want it to come through any, filter it town manager. We wanted it to go right to the department, right? So it doesn't come through our office and stop here and we assign it. It's assigned already to the departments and goes directly to them, right? Now, there's some issues that come up, right? That may have more than one department. And we try to look at other municipalities and say, hey, what categories do you have? What do you see out there that are frequent requests that people are using. So we modeled after a couple other communities, took what we thought we would see here as well, and we put them on there and put the categories, right? One of the notable ones is the police came back and said, hey, we already do this. It's called dispatch, right? And we don't want people to use 311 for emergencies, right? And the chief of police, Chief McQuaid, sat down with me and said, hey, look, I don't want to do anything on this, and here's why. And I said, okay, I agree with you. I think you're right. So we don't have anything. But every now and then, we do get something for the police, and we send it to them, right? And we always respond back to, hey, this is, and Chanel does an excellent job at this. If this is an emergency or something, call 911, right? And, and then we forward it to the police and let them take it. But and I agreed with the police on this was, yeah, I don't want, hey, I just saw X happen and put it into 311, because what if somebody didn't see it right away? Dispatch, 911 was the appropriate way to do that. So if it was multi-department, the system allows you to tag other users and I think the notes portion that you're talking about is because there's public facing and then there's communication that is not public, right? For instance, if somebody asks for, hey, a tree fell on my yard, right? It might go to conservation and to Public Works. So those two departments could have a conversation like, have you already been out there, cleared this? Is there any issues from conservation? DPW says, all right, we need to remove it, right? No damage to anybody's personal property or anything, or XYZ, whatever the case might be, and you would see that, and that would be captured in the notes. But what it did, and what the purpose of 311 is to provide a way for the public to reach out to town government and say, hey, we see this, or this is out here, because if we didn't drive by it, if we didn't see it, right, it didn't mean that we didn't need to address it. So we wanted to give the public a way to communicate with us, and it has a way that departments can cross-communicate in there, right? And this, I will tell you, this was a challenge rolling out and getting folks to understand what we were trying to do here.
Do you still find people, instead of using the 311, they end up calling a department?
Yeah, look, Mr. Donahue, Chair, I think if you've always, because look, we used to have a program, action needed request. You come into the town manager's office, right, and they gave you a piece of paper, and you wrote long form out what you did. What we do now is we hand you off to Chanel, and Chanel types it into 311 for you, right? If that's the way. So we kind of retired some of those old systems, but there are people that, yeah, absolutely, and we're not saying no to that.
Right.
That's not what we're saying. If you write us a letter, if you call the telephone, but if you have an app, here's a way to communicate with the town and say, I see this, can we get this fixed, or this is an issue. I think you've used it before, right? Mr. McCarthy's used it before.
I've used it.
I wish we would respond. I wish we could say we respond to everything in under 24 hours. I just don't know that that's possible. Well, his was, Mr. McCarthy's particular one, because we don't maintain school categories, because I think schools have their own system of what they're doing. He got it in, we passed it off the schools, and I think Ernie had it fixed in a couple hours, right? So the 311 system was just another way for us to have people in town be able to communicate with us if there was something that needed to be fixed. Or have we gotten any nicotine requests on that one? I mean, we're all getting spammed with the nicotine requests, but that was the intent of what the 311 was. So it's another tool that enhances communication between departments.
Do you find that people are using it a lot more frequently?
I think so, yes. I would say, and part of the reason that we see an uptick in the use after we did the rebranding and calling it, it really isn't a 311 system, but we just called it that, was because of Chanel. Chanel became the face of North Attleboro through that app, and her excellent customer service that she offers when people comes in. And I want to say, she only does that part-time, right? She works in another department for another half of the day. So, exceptional job. But we've seen people use it, and the departments that have really embraced it, I think they see the benefits of it. Because I've had a couple come back and say, hey, yep, we've had XYZ was done within, we put it in, it was done, and they sent me and I got the handshake back that said it was done.
Melinda, you have any other thoughts on it or anything? Okay. All right. Let's go on to the next one. Update on community engagement. Laura?
Well, this one started with, we met with Taylor, and we were talking about, we shared our concerns with, we would like to have a public meeting. How do we best get people in the room? How do we get informed people in the room? So then from that meeting, I drafted a few slides, some basic, because there was a discussion about a basic training to start at the same place to understand our government, understand what this process of the charter is, understand what the charter is. So drafted some slides to begin a conversation with Taylor. It's been hard to get them to a meeting, but I think both her and Chanel, their schedules are just so crammed. Now, there isn't any real update because I haven't been able to continue a conversation. They haven't been able to attend one of our meetings, so I think we as a group are to a point where, okay, we want to have a public meeting. We at least have to try. So I don't know, I think if we keep trying to get this perfect, we're already zooming through February. I'm getting a little concerned on time with what we have to accomplish, that perhaps, as we did before, we just simply offer a public meeting. As a group, we may or may not want to give kind of a baseline, here's what you need to know at the beginning of that meeting. The last time we were together, Melinda made a good point where it'd be better to get that information out first, because there's an assumption if we get people in the room, people who don't understand what we're doing aren't even going to get in the room, so what's the point of having a training into an empty room? The idea would be to get people in the room. So I don't know, I'd like to hear people's thoughts of where we go from here. Do we just simplify? Maybe this is too big of an ask for Taylor and Chanel. We just simply pick a date, have a public forum, see if people come, and move on.
One of the things, I sent out an email to both Taylor and Chanel, and I asked them about February 27th, okay? Taylor responded to me, Chanel's on vacation this week. So I'm probably not going to know, I would say, until Monday at the earliest, and not that type of thing. So one of the things that we can talk about is with scheduling of the meetings in March. Now, the thing is, February was kind of a wash because of storms and that type of thing, and it just seemed to wreak havoc with the schedule and that type of thing. So I want the report to be able to do, the final report to do it sometime in May, okay? So that we can have it on the council's desk by the second meeting in May, okay? So we have, basically one more week in February, and then we have March, which is a long month, and then we have April. So my question to you is as a group, if I cannot get Chanel and, Taylor here for next Thursday, do you want to, cancel the meeting for next Thursday, and then we'll do March 6th? Then the question becomes, when do we start doing weekly meetings so that we're not up against it at the end? So I'm open to suggestions. I know there will be a few more people that we'll invite to talk to, okay? The head of the library is one, and then the police chief and maybe a few others and that type of thing. So I just want to get everyone's feelings on that. if we, or do we meet 3 out of 4 Thursdays in the month of March and that type of thing. So, you know, you don't have to answer me right now, okay? Because I know you have to check to see what's going on in your own life and that type of thing. But I think that we're getting near, crunch time, and I just don't want this to rush, because when we did the report for the first year, the council didn't get the report until the very last meeting of that council, and then it was the last meeting of that council because the election had already been held, and I don't want to get it to, to that point again. I'd rather get it done in May, near the end of May, and that type of thing. So I'm going to send out an email again to all of you, okay? And I would appreciate your suggestions on how we should approach this, okay? And I would appreciate that, okay? Go ahead, Deb.
Just to go back to what Laura was talking about in terms of the slides and the timing and Taylor, I'm wondering if it would be useful, like, could you send it to her just over email and say?
Been done.
Okay, so you did that. Okay, so that's already been done.
And Taylor thought it was fantastic.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
Well, I think then maybe, I think Taylor is very busy. I think it's hard to get her on Thursday nights. That may not happen because she has a life. What if, I think our decision needs to be, are we going to target a time? So say, where are we? So say end of March, we would like to have a public meeting. Then we have a specific request to go to Taylor. From what I sent you, do you have any suggestions? We got a great podcast now, which I've listened to. Maybe we do something on the podcast. Can we get something on that flash and sign out? What are ways that she was going to make some bite-sized things to push out to the community to hopefully provide just enough information to get people in the room. That was the whole concept. So maybe having her in the room to talk about it isn't going to happen, but can we get at that as another way? But with that being said, we need to have a target. Is this we're going to have a public meeting, community meeting at, I don't know, like this date in March. So therefore, we have a couple of weeks to follow through and see if we can get anything done with Taylor. Something concrete.
The other thing that we can think of, and I'll have a question for you, what if we do a Zoom session with Taylor, and that, where she doesn't have to physically be here, but, we can do a Zoom with her and that, so.
If you're looking for Taylor next Thursday, we'll do everything we can to make sure she's here.
I know, Thursdays are hard for her and that type of thing, so.
So I think we have like a couple of different things at issue. So there's like, we want to talk to Taylor. I believe that Taylor is open and available and said she was willing, right? So there's one issue. But I think what Laura is pointing to is we have a tight timeline. So do we want to pick a date to have a public meeting, and we'll know that that's the date, and then we'll get done what we can get done because we know we're trying to get people in a room.
Would you piggyback with another group?
What does that mean?
I would look at the school chair and say, maybe if there's a March meeting at the school, you could have potentially 2 meetings, and because you'll get a pretty good crowd for the school to come out. Would it be worthwhile if that's what you're looking for? Don't know. I'm just saying, is that a potential opportunity to?
Do you know when the meeting in March is?
I'm not on the school building committee, but I
Okay.
would assume that they're not. It's two completely different.
Yeah.
Granted, it is, but you're getting a crowd. You're getting seats.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for a community engagement, look, we can work with you. If you're looking for a venue, we'll help you find the venue to do.
I don't think we're going to
Because these are all public meetings that people
Right.
can come to.
So I would suggest, it doesn't have to, even getting her in a Zoom, we know what needs to happen. So it could simply be and I'd be happy to follow up on it. John, you can follow, but just simply have a conversation with Taylor and say, is there something you can put, she doesn't have to be physically in the room with us. We gave her information to work with. What can you put together? Then run it by us. Here's a video clip she suggested. Here's a blurb, one of those, a visual something or other. I forget, I've lost the word, a GIF something. But here are some tools that we can push out. But again, we need to have a date because we keep talking about this and the weeks are flying by. So if we know we have 3 weeks to get this done, we'll get as much done as we can. And if nothing happens, well, we got a date set and maybe people will come in the room and we take
So
it.
from the town's perspective, whatever date you pick, we'll make sure Taylor is aware and help you do all the advertisement pushing. If the Charter Review Committee wants to come in and sit for a podcast, happy to do that with you as well.
That would be fun. The podcasts are excellent.
Yeah, that's the fun part. I mean, I agree. I mean, I think that we need to pick a date,
Okay.
and I think that from there, we can, once the date is set, we can work backwards a little bit and fill in the holes. Obviously, we have support, and we'll figure out what needs to be done.
Do you want to do it at the end of March?
The public meeting?
Yeah.
We need some time to gear up. It's already the 20th, so
All
if
right.
we do it too close, we won't.
Well, I'm not saying I'm saying the 27th. It goes 6/13/2027, okay? Do you want to go into the first week in April, okay? Pick a date. That'll be our target.
I think the 27th is the last Thursday in March. That gives us 3 weeks ahead of it, plus a little bit we have left in
Just make
February.
sure it's not Holy Thursday.
I looked.
Okay,
It's
all
not.
right?
It's not, because Easter's not till April. There's no other holidays coming up there.
Okay,
Eid is the 30th, but I don't think that's going to have an impact.
okay. So why don't we shoot for March 27th for the public hearing?
That way we can give specifics to Taylor, and then she can be working on it. She doesn't have to be physically in the room with us. She can be working on it.
We'll make sure that she's got that and she'll reach out.
And I think the ask, in my opinion, of Taylor is, we're having a meeting on March 27th. Here's all the stuff I produced for you. What's the comms plan for March 27th? And how will that, how can you help us
Okay, yeah,
deliver
and then she'll
on
get it
this?
done. She doesn't have to come to an evening meeting to do it.
Okay.
All right.
Look at that, we did it.
Yeah, but I still need to, like I said, to figure out, with the meeting dates going forward, how often you want to meet. Right now, we're meeting every other Thursday, but I think we're going to have to gear up, maybe, 3 out of 4 Thursdays and that type of thing, maybe not every single week. So, I'm going to send out an email to get feedback from you guys. Okay. Does anyone else have anything they want to bring up?
I would throw out there, the emails, sometimes we don't get a whole lot of response, so why don't we just solve this now? Can
Okay.
people talk about their schedules now?
I think I'd like to know, what else we have to talk about, because I feel like if I don't know what the agenda needs to be, then I don't know what we're doing, and I don't know why we're here. So I'm happy to give availability, but I don't necessarily
Okay.
know what we're committing to.
The whole thing is, there will be more interviews with department heads, not a whole lot more. But what we're going to have to do is take the data that we have from all the interviews, and we have to put it in some type of, let's go over it, what we considered to be important, what we considered, was there something that was a common theme with several people and that type of thing. But also, what I would like us to do, okay, is to systematically go through the charter page by page, okay, to talk about anything else that stands out to us that needs any attention whatsoever, okay? So that's kind of the thoughts that I have, with what we're going to do, okay? So I guess we'll have to play it by ear and go from there. But you know, here's the thing. Just because we schedule a meeting, and if we feel as if we're ahead of the curve and that type of thing, then we can cancel meetings in the future and that type of thing. So, you know.
John, I would volunteer to sketch out, here's the things we're hoping to accomplish, you know, start with, this is when we hope to have the report done, these are what we hope to accomplish, and that will give us an idea of how many meetings we need to schedule, and I'd be happy to put that together and then share it with everybody, and then you kind of take it, we do have that spreadsheet that I started too, that has a list of everyone we interviewed and the themes.
Okay,
And people, so we have something to work from, at least the
Okay.
baseline.
all right. Well, then, why don't you do that?
I'd be happy to
then?
do that, and then it's a little more concrete for us, and then you know, it's like, this is what we have to accomplish, we can get it done in 6 meetings, how about these dates? And that at least will give us something to work
Does
on.
that sound like a plan to everyone?
I think so.
Okay. Okay. Does anyone else have anything else they want to bring up? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting is over.